Alright, let's get one thing straight before we even start. BTS is not a group where one member carries the team and the rest just vibes in the background. Nah, that's not how Bangtan works, and if you think it does, you clearly haven't been paying attention. But here's the thing that even the most die-hard armies argue about at 3 a.m. in Twitter threads and Reddit forums. In every single era of BTS's career, from the gritty, underdog hip-hop days of 2013 all the way to the solo-dominated Chapter 2 era, there has always been one member who just hit different. One member who owned that moment in time so completely that when you look back, you can't think of that era without seeing their face first. So here's the million-dollar question: who is the undisputed king of each era? Was the one who dominated the Love Yourself era the same person who carried the raw aggression of the School Trilogy? Did the member who defined Wings even make it to the top during Map of the Soul? And why does number 3 on this list make absolutely zero sense until you actually hear the full story? Could it be the vocalist nobody expected to peak that hard? Or the rapper who quietly rewrote the entire group dynamic without anyone noticing? Can you guess which member turned a single solo stage into a cultural earthquake that shifted BTS's entire artistic direction? And here's one more to keep you up tonight. Is number 1 the name you're thinking of right now, or is it someone who's been criminally underestimated this whole time? Buckle up, because we're counting down from number 7, and trust me, every single pick on this list is backed by facts, receipts, and moments that literally changed K-pop history. Let's go. Number 7. Jin, the one who turned goodbye into a legacy. You know what's funny? When people talk about the BTS Chapter 2 era, that wild, uncharted territory that kicked off in 2022 when the group announced they'd be focusing on solo activities, the first names that pop up in most conversations are usually the ones who dropped chart-topping bangers and racked up billions of streams. And honestly, that's fair. But here's where most people get it completely wrong. They forget that an era isn't just defined by who made the most noise. Sometimes, it's defined by who made the most meaning. And in the Chapter 2 era, that person, the one who quietly, emotionally, and almost poetically set the entire tone for what BTS's solo chapter would feel like, was Kim Seokjin. Yeah, Jin. The guy who's been called the visual since day one, the one who makes dad jokes that make even Namjoon physically cringe, the one a lot of casual fans criminally underestimate when it comes to artistic depth. But make no mistake, what Jin did during the Chapter 2 era wasn't just impressive. It was foundational. He didn't just participate in this era. He opened the door, walked through it first, and showed every other member what it looked like to face the unknown with grace, vulnerability, and an almost absurd amount of courage. Let's rewind for a second. October 28, 2022. Coldplay is performing at the River Plate Stadium in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in front of tens of thousands of screaming fans. And in the middle of that concert, a figure walks out on stage that makes the entire stadium lose its collective mind. It's Jin. And he's not there for a cameo. He's there to perform The Astronaut, his solo single that he co-wrote with Coldplay, yes, with Chris Martin himself, a song about leaving the people you love, about floating away into the vast unknown, about gratitude and loneliness and the terrifying beauty of separation. And if you watch that performance, seriously, go watch it right now if you haven't. You'll see something you almost never see from a K-pop idol on a global stage. Raw, unfiltered emotion. Jin isn't performing. He's saying goodbye. He knows what's coming. In less than 2 months, on December 13, 2022, he's going to walk into the 5th Infantry Division Recruit Training Center in Yongkyeon, Gyeonggi Province, and become the first BTS member to begin his mandatory military service. The first. Let that sink in. In a group of 7, somebody has to go first. Somebody has to be the one who rips the band-aid off, who steps away from the biggest stage in the world, who trades a microphone for a uniform, who leaves behind millions of fans and 6 brothers who've been by his side for over a decade. And that somebody was Jin. Not because he volunteered out of some dramatic sense of duty, although knowing Jin, he probably cracked a joke about it, but because he was the oldest. Born on December 4th, 1992, Kim Seokjin has always carried the quiet weight of being BTS's eldest young. In Korean culture, that's not just a title. It's a responsibility. It means you go first. You set the example. You absorb the uncertainty so the younger ones don't have to. And Jin did exactly that. But before he left, he made sure to leave something behind. The Astronaut wasn't just a farewell track, it was a narrative masterpiece disguised as a pop ballad. The lyrics tell the story of an alien who lands on Earth, finds love and warmth among humans, and eventually has to return to space. It's a metaphor so painfully on the nose for Jin's situation that it hurts. He literally wrote himself as a being from another world who found his home with ARMY and now has to leave. The song debuted at #1 on iTunes charts in over 90 countries. It charted on the Billboard Hot 100. And its music video, animated in a style reminiscent of The Little Prince, racked up tens of millions of views within days. But the numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is what happened in the weeks before enlistment. Jin held a special hug event where he personally embraced over 1,000 fans, one by one, as a farewell gesture. 1,000 people. Do you understand how physically exhausting that is? How emotionally draining it must be to look into the eyes of 1,000 people who are crying because you're leaving and still smile, still crack a joke, still make them feel like everything's going to be okay. That's not idle behavior. That's human behavior at its most beautiful. And then he was gone. For roughly 18 months, the loudest, funniest, most chaotically confident member of BTS was silent. No Instagram stories of fancy meals. No surprise lives. Just silence. And in that silence, something incredible happened. ARMY didn't just wait, they rallied. Jin's enlistment became a turning point for the fandom, a moment that transformed anxiety into solidarity. Fans sent letters to his military base. They organized birthday projects in his absence. They kept his songs charting. They proved that BTS's bond with ARMY wasn't just about content and comebacks, it was about loyalty that transcends presence. And then came June 12, 2024. BTS's 11th debut anniversary. And who walks out at the Festa celebration looking absolutely glowing, with that signature wide-shouldered silhouette and that ridiculous worldwide handsome grin? Jin. He was the first to leave, and he was the first to come back. Discharged right on BTS's anniversary, as if the universe itself had a sense of poetic timing. The footage of the other members reacting to his return, the tears, the laughter, the sheer JY, it became one of the most watched BTS moments of the entire Chapter 2 era. But Jin wasn't done. He didn't come back just to rest on the emotional high of his return. In November 2024, he dropped his debut solo album, Happy, led by the single Running Wild. And here's what made that album so uniquely Jin: it wasn't trying to compete. It wasn't a flex. It wasn't designed to break streaming records or dominate global charts with viral TikTok hooks. It was exactly what the title said, happy. Warm, breezy, feel-good music that sounded like a guy who went through something heavy, came out the other side, and decided that the best revenge against hardship is just being joyful. Running Wild had this almost retro, carefree energy, like a song you'd play driving down a coastal highway with the windows down. And the album tracks explore different shades of contentment and gratitude. In a K-pop landscape increasingly obsessed with dark concepts, intense choreography, and genre-pushing experimentation, Jin released an album that basically said, "Hey, I'm happy. And I want you to be happy too." It was brave in its simplicity. It was punk in its optimism. Critics might look at Jin's Chapter 2 numbers and compare them unfavorably to, say, the stratospheric chart performance of other BTS soloists. And sure, if we're playing the pure numbers game, Jin's solo metrics don't top every list. But that's exactly why this ranking isn't just about numbers. Jin defined the emotional architecture of Chapter 2. He showed that this era wasn't about competition between members, it was about individual expression. He proved that you could step away from the biggest group in the world, serve your country, come back, and still be unapologetically yourself without chasing trends. He was the anchor. The first goodbye. The first return. The emotional bookend. And anyone who thinks being number 7 on this list means he's somehow last doesn't understand how this game works. Number 7 in a list of legends is still legendary. So now that we've laid the foundation with the man who literally opened and closed BTS's most uncertain chapter, what happens when we move to number 6? Which member dominated an era so visceral, so aesthetically groundbreaking, that it literally birthed an entire cinematic universe? And more importantly, did anyone see that member coming for that era? Stay tuned, because this list is just getting started, and trust me, the surprises are far from over. Number 6. V, the face that built an entire universe. Okay, let's talk about something that most casual BTS fans, and honestly, even some armies, don't fully appreciate. When you hear HYYH, or the most beautiful moment in life, what comes to mind? The piano intro of I Need You? The gut-wrenching storyline? The aesthetic shift that took BTS from hip-hop rookies to cinematic storytellers? Yeah, all of that. But here's the question nobody asks enough. Who made that era feel like a movie? Who was the face that turned a K-pop music video into something that felt like an indie film by Park Chan-wook? Who looked into the camera with so much raw, untrained, almost feral emotional intensity that the entire Bangtan Universe, the BU, with its sprawling theories, its timeline paradoxes, its heartbreak, was essentially anchored to one character's story? The answer is Kim Taehyung. V, and his dominance of the HYYH era isn't just a footnote in BTS history, it's the entire reason that era feels the way it does. Let's set the scene, because if you weren't following BTS in 2015, you have no idea how different the landscape was. BTS had just wrapped up the School Trilogy, Too Cool for School, RUL 8-2, School Love Affair, and they were respected in the underground K-pop scene. Sure, but they were not the global phenomenon they'd become. They were a mid-tier group from a small company called Big Hit Entertainment that most industry insiders didn't take seriously. HYB? That name didn't even exist yet. Big Hit was basically Bang Si-hyuk, a dream, and 7 boys fighting for relevance in an industry dominated by the big 3, SM, YG, and JYP. And then April 29th, 2015 happened. I Need You dropped. And everything changed. But here's the thing, I Need You wasn't just a great song. It was a statement. It was BTS saying, we're not doing school-themed hip-hop anymore. We're going somewhere darker, deeper, more cinematic. And the music video reflected that. It was moody, fragmented, full of symbolism and pain. Each member had their own storyline within the video: Jungkook getting hit by a car, Suga in a burning room, Jimin in a bathtub. But V's storyline was the one that made you gasp. In the original 19+ rated version of I Need You, the one deemed too intense for broadcast, V's character murders his abusive father. He stabs him. This wasn't metaphorical. This wasn't a dream sequence. Kim Taehyung, the guy known for his boxy smile and playful 4D personality, was covered in blood, trembling, staring at his own hands in horror. And he sold it. Not like an idol pretending to act. Like an actual actor delivering a career-defining performance. And that single scene, V standing in a dimly lit room, blood on his shirt, tears on his face, became the genesis point of the entire Bangtan Universe. Everything that followed in the BU, the time loops, the alternate realities, the Save Me webtoon, the interconnected storylines that fans would spend years decoding, all of it traces back to V's character making that irreversible choice. He was the catalyst, the domino that started the fall. And Taehyung played it with a level of emotional conviction that made Bang Si-hyuk reportedly say that V had natural acting talent that couldn't be taught. Let's talk about the Prologue film next, because this is where it gets even crazier. Released on October 7, 2015, the HYYH Prologue was an 11-minute short film that served as a bridge between I Need You and Run. It's set on a beach, and the 7 members are goofing around, being young, being free. It's beautiful and melancholic in the way that only Korean storytelling knows how to be. There's this aching awareness that youth is temporary, that this happiness is borrowed time. And the climax? V climbs up onto a structure overlooking the ocean. The other members are below, unaware. And V spreads his arms and jumps. The screen cuts to black. The fandom erupted. Theories flooded every platform. Was it a suicide? A metaphor for letting go of youth? A time loop reset? A sacrifice? Nobody knew for sure. But everybody knew one thing. That image, V's silhouette against the sky, arms outstretched, frozen in the millisecond between flight and fall, became the defining visual of the entire HYYH era. It was on fan art, on phone wallpapers, on tattoos. That single frame became as iconic to BTS as any album cover or stage outfit. And it was all V. All Taehyung. His body, his posture, his willingness to throw himself, literally, into the story. But it wasn't just about the storyline. Let's talk about what V brought musically to this era, because people love to reduce him to the visual and completely ignore the fact that his voice was one of the most unique instruments in K-pop. During HYYH, V's deep baritone, that rich, warm, almost jazz-like tone, started getting real recognition. On tracks like Hold Me Tight, his vocal texture added a layer of warmth and melancholy that no other member could replicate. Listen to the way his voice wraps around the melody in Hold Me Tight. It's not technically flashy like Jungkook's runs or emotionally piercing like Jimin's high notes. It's something else entirely. It's like hearing someone hum a lullaby at sunset. There's a comfort in it, but also a sadness, like the song knows this beautiful moment won't last. And that's the entire thesis of HYYH right there, embedded in the natural quality of V's voice. Then there was Run, released in November 2015, and the music video pushed V's character even further into the center of the narrative. The Run MV is chaotic and heartbreaking. The members are literally running from something, whether it's adulthood, consequences, or their own demons. And V's character is the most reckless, the most unhinged, the one who seems to be simultaneously the most alive and the most self-destructive. There's a scene where he's underwater, submerged, thrashing, and the way Taehyung performs it, you genuinely feel like you're watching someone drown. Not in water. In emotion. In the weight of what his character has done. And here's what a lot of people forget. This was also the era when V's visuals started breaking the internet. His orange-red hair during the Run era? Absolutely iconic. Korean netizens literally called him CGI-like because they couldn't believe a real human being could look like that. His fancam during the Dope era, which bridged into HYYH promotions, went viral not because of a flashy dance move, but because people literally could not stop staring at his face. And while being called handsome might sound superficial, in the context of HYYH, these otherworldly visuals actually served the narrative. His character was supposed to feel like someone who didn't quite belong to this world. Someone ethereal, caught between reality and fantasy. And Taehyung's actual physical presence, those deep-set eyes, that jawline, that almost surreal bone structure, made his character feel less like a fictional construct and more like a tragic figure from a Haruki Murakami novel. You couldn't tell where Kim Taehyung ended and the Bangtan Universe's most tortured soul began. Now let's also talk about something that happened because of V's impact during HYYH. He got cast in Hwarang, The Poet Warrior Youth, a KBS2 historical drama that aired from December 2016 to February 2017. While the filming and airing technically spilled into the Wings era, the casting happened because of what V showed during HYYH. The producers saw those music videos and thought, this guy can act. And they were right. V held his own alongside established Korean actors like Park Seo-joon and Park Hyung-sik, and his performance as Han Sung, a bright, lovable character with a tragic fate, earned him praise from drama critics who normally wouldn't give a K-pop idol the time of day. That casting, that opportunity, that proof of concept for V as a legitimate actor, it all started with HYYH. It all started with a blood-stained shirt and a jump into the ocean. And let's not sleep on the concert side of things. Number 5. J-Hope, the engine they never saw coming. Let's be brutally honest for a second. If you asked 100 casual K-pop fans to name the most impactful BTS member during the Map of the Soul era, that monumental, world-conquering period between 2019 and early 2020 when BTS went from biggest group in K-pop to biggest group on the planet, most of them would probably say Jungkook. Or Jimin. Maybe RM because of the intro, persona that opened the whole era. And you know what? Those are all reasonable answers. But they're wrong. Because the member who truly, physically, mechanically powered the map of the soul era, the one without whom the concerts wouldn't hit the same, the choreography wouldn't land the same, the award show stages wouldn't go viral the same way, was Jung HYYH. J-Hope, the man from Gwangju who most people still reduce to the happy one or the dancer, without understanding that those two labels barely scratched the surface of what he brought to the most ambitious era in BTS's career. And here's the thing that makes this pick so fascinating. J-Hope didn't dominate the map of the soul era by being the loudest or the most visible in the traditional sense. He dominated it by being so fundamentally essential that if you removed him from the equation, the entire era collapses like a building with its load-bearing walls ripped out. Let's start where it matters most, the stage. Because the map of the soul era was, without exaggeration, BTS's most physically demanding performance era ever. On Alone, the title track from Map of the Soul, 7, released in February 2020, featured choreography so complex, so aggressive, so relentlessly high energy that multiple choreographers involved in its creation described it as one of the hardest routines they'd ever designed for any group. The Kinetic Manifesto film for On wasn't just a dance performance music video, it was a full-scale military-level spectacle filmed in a single continuous take with marching band formations, drumline sequences, and a choreo breakdown that required every single member to be at peak physical form. And who was the anchor? Who was the member that the choreographic team built the formations around? Who was the one running emergency rehearsals at 2 a.m. because a transition wasn't clean enough? J-Hope. Jung HYYH wasn't just a performer during this era, he was effectively BTS's performance director. And that's not fan speculation. That's documented. Multiple behind-the-scenes videos from the Map of the Soul rehearsal period show J-Hope running sections of choreography over and over with individual members, correcting angles, adjusting timing, demonstrating counts. There's a famous clip from a Run BTS episode where RM himself acknowledges that J-Hope is the one who keeps the performance team together, that without his obsessive attention to detail, there's stage synchronization, which is arguably the single biggest selling point of BTS's live shows, would not be at the level it is. And during Mo's era specifically, that synchronization had to be flawless because the stakes were higher than ever. BTS was performing at the Grammys. They were doing sold-out stadium tours. They were on every American talk show. The margin for error was zero, and J-Hope was the quality control. Now let's talk about Mama 2019, because if there's a single moment that encapsulates J-Hope's dominance during this era, it's his opening dance performance at the Net Asian Music Awards in Nagoya, Japan. Picture this. The lights go dark in the Nagoya Dome. 65,000 people are holding their breath. A spotlight hits the center of the stage, and there's J-Hope. Alone. And for the next several minutes, he delivers a solo dance performance that is so technically precise, so explosively powerful, so dripping with charisma that the internet broke. We're talking trending worldwide on Twitter within minutes. We're talking dance professionals, actual choreographers and dancers with decades of experience, posting reaction videos saying things like, "This man is not a K-pop idol who dances. He is a dancer who happens to be a K-pop idol." And they're right. Because here's what most people don't know about J-Hope's background. Before BTS, before Big Hit, before Jung HYYH became J-Hope, he was a street dancer in Gwangju. Not a trainee learning choreography in a studio, a street dancer. He was part of a dance crew called Neuron, and in 2008, he won a national dance competition. National. He was 14 years old. His style, a lethal fusion of popping, locking, and urban choreography, wasn't learned in an idol factory. It was forged on the streets, in dance battles, in an environment where you either moved better than the person across from you or you went home embarrassed. That rawness, that competitive edge, that street-level authenticity, it's what separates J-Hope's movement from literally every other idol in the industry. When he dances, there's a weight to it, a gravity, a snap in his isolations, and a fluidity in his transitions that you can't manufacture in a training room. And during the Map of the Soul era, he was at the absolute peak of that ability. Then there's Chicken Noodle Soup. Released on September 27th, 2019, featuring Colombian-American singer Becky G. This track did something that nobody in K-pop had really done before. It bridged Korean hip-hop with Latin pop in a way that felt completely organic. The song sampled the 2006 Webstar and Young track of the same name, flipping a nostalgic American hip-hop reference into a bilingual, tricultural celebration of dance and identity. The music video featured choreography inspired by street dance cultures from around the world, and J-Hope and Becky G trading verses in Korean, English, and Spanish. It debuted at number 81 on the Billboard Hot 100, and the dance challenge that accompanied it went massively viral on every social media platform. But beyond the numbers, Chicken Noodle Soup was significant because it showcased J-Hope as a solo artist who could hold his own outside the BTS framework. This wasn't J-Hope featuring on a BTS track. This was J-Hope as a standalone cultural force, collaborating with a major Western artist on equal footing and delivering a product that felt genuinely global without losing an ounce of his Korean identity. And let's not forget that just a year before the Mose era officially kicked off, J-Hope had already dropped Hope World, his debut mixtape, in March 2018. That project debuted at number 38 on the Billboard 200, making him the highest charting Korean solo artist on that chart at the time. Hope World was a kaleidoscopic, genre-bending trip through J-Hope's psyche. Tracks like Daydream and Airplane showcased a musical range that went far beyond what most people expected from the dancer. It blended pop, funk, synth, and old-school hip-hop into something that felt entirely unique, entirely him. And while Hope World technically dropped just before the Mose era, its impact carried directly into it. It gave J-Hope the creative confidence to approach Outro, Ego, his solo track on Map of the Soul, 7, with a level of artistic self-assurance that made the song one of the most emotionally resonant solos on the entire album. Speaking of Outro, Ego, let's talk about that masterpiece for a moment, because it might be the most underrated solo track in the entire BTS discography. Released as the final solo intro/outro on Map of the Soul, 7, Ego, was J-Hope's answer to the album's central question, who am I? While RM's persona, asked about the masks we wear and Suga's shadow, confronted the darkness behind ambition, J-Hope's Ego was pure, unapologetic acceptance. The song opens with a sample of BTS's very first track, No More Dream, literally rewinding to the beginning, and then builds into an explosive declaration of self-love. The lyrics trace J-Hope's journey from a kid in Gwangju who almost quit being a trainee. Yes, J-Hope nearly left Big Hit before debut because he felt overwhelmed and inadequate, to the global superstar standing on stages he once couldn't even imagine. The music video is a burst of color and retro-futuristic animation that mirrors the emotional trajectory, from confusion and doubt to absolute, radiant certainty. My ego is the way I walk, the way I talk, he raps. And you believe him. Because by the Map of the Soul era, J-Hope had earned every syllable of that confidence. He wasn't performing confidence. He had become it. And you know what might be the most underappreciated fact about J-Hope during this entire era? The Map of the Soul tour, which was supposed to be BTS's most ambitious world tour ever, with stadium dates across 4 continents, was cancelled because of COVID-19. J-Hope had prepared for months. The choreography was locked. The set list was designed. The rehearsals were done. And then the world shut down, and he never got to perform the Map of the Soul material on the stage it was built for. Think about what that means for someone whose entire identity as an artist is rooted in live performance, in movement, in the electric exchange between a dancer and an audience. Number 4, RM, the architect who built Bangtan from nothing. Here's a fact that should genuinely blow your mind if you've never heard it before. BTS, the biggest musical act of the 21st century, the group that sold out stadiums on every continent, the group that spoke at the United Nations, the group that generated billions in revenue for South Korea's economy. BTS exists because one teenager from Ilsan recorded a rap over a beat in his bedroom and uploaded it to the internet. That teenager was Kim Namjoon. And when Bang Si-hyuk, the founder of a tiny, nearly bankrupt entertainment company called Big Hit, heard that rap, he didn't think, I should sign this kid. He thought, I should build an entire group around this kid. That's not a fan myth. That's not an exaggeration. That is the literal, documented origin story of BTS. Namjoon, who would later be known as Rap Monster and eventually simply RM, was the foundation stone. Member number 1. The first name on the roster. Every single other member of BTS, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, Jungkook, was recruited after him, selected to complement and orbit around the gravitational center that was Kim Namjoon's talent. And during the School Trilogy era, from 2013 to 2014, when BTS was nothing more than a scrappy underdog group from a company that most of the K-pop industry openly laughed at, RM didn't just lead the group. He was the group. He was the voice, the brain, the pen, and the shield. Take that in for a second. Before there was Dynamite. Before there was Butter. Before there was a Grammy nomination, a Billboard Hot 100 #1, or a stadium tour. Before any of that, there was a 19-year-old kid with an IQ of 148 who learned English by watching Friends reruns with Korean subtitles turned off, standing in a cramped practice room in Gangnam, writing lyrics about the crushing weight of the Korean education system, about teenagers being told their dreams don't matter, about a generation being ground into dust by societal expectations, and somehow turning all of that rage and frustration into music that would eventually change the world. The School Trilogy, Too Cool for School, RUL 8-2, and School Love Affair dropped between June 2013 and February 2014, and if you listen to those albums today, they sound like a completely different group from the BTS most people know. They're raw. They're aggressive. They're unapologetically hip-hop in a way that the later, more pop-oriented BTS rarely revisited. And the reason they sound like that is because RM set the tone. He was the primary lyricist. He was the main creative voice in the studio. He had production credits on nearly every single track. At 19 years old, Kim Namjoon was doing what most K-pop idols don't start doing until they're veterans with a decade of experience. He was writing his own music, shaping his own narrative, and refusing to let the company turn BTS into a cookie-cutter idol group. No More Dream, BTS's debut single released on June 13, 2013, is essentially an RM manifesto set to a beat. The lyrics challenge listeners, specifically Korean teenagers, to stop living according to their parents' blueprints and start dreaming for themselves. What's your dream? RM demands in the opening bars, and the way he delivers it, with this gritty, almost confrontational energy, you can feel that it's not just a song. It's a declaration. It's a kid who was told by his own parents that rapping wouldn't lead anywhere, standing on a stage and saying, "Watch me." And people did watch. But here's the painful truth about the School Trilogy era that a lot of newer armies don't fully grasp. During this period, BTS was not successful by any traditional measure. No More Dream didn't chart well. Their debut showcase was attended by a modest crowd. They were performing at small venues, appearing on low-budget variety shows, and being openly dismissed by the K-pop establishment. Big Hit Entertainment was so financially precarious that the members shared a single small apartment in Seoul, sleeping in bunk beds, sometimes eating nothing but jjajangmyeon noodles because the budget couldn't accommodate proper meals. RM has talked about this period in multiple interviews, the exhaustion, the doubt, the feeling of screaming into a void and hearing nothing back. And on top of the commercial struggle, RM was dealing with something even more personally devastating, rejection from the very community he came from. Before BTS, Namjoon was a respected figure in Seoul's underground hip-hop scene. He rapped under the name Runch Randa, and he'd earned genuine credibility among underground rappers and producers. But the moment he signed with an entertainment company and became an idol, that credibility evaporated overnight. The underground scene didn't just distance themselves from RM, they actively attacked him. He was called a sellout, a fake, a traitor to real hip-hop. And the most infamous moment came in 2013, when an underground rapper named Be Free publicly humiliated RM and Suga during a live hip-hop forum broadcast. B3 mocked them for wearing makeup, for being idols, for betraying hip-hop by joining an entertainment system. And RM, this 19-year-old kid who had already sacrificed his underground reputation, his academic prospects, and his personal comfort to chase this dream, had to sit there and take it. On camera. In front of an audience. He didn't lash out. He didn't storm off. He sat there, absorbing the disrespect, because he knew that losing his temper would hurt BTS's already fragile reputation even more. That restraint, that emotional intelligence, that ability to swallow personal pain for the sake of the collective, that's not something they teach you in idol training. That's leadership. And RM displayed it at an age when most people can barely manage their own laundry. But here's where it gets even more impressive. Despite the commercial struggles, despite the industry mockery, despite the underground betrayal, RM kept writing. And not just writing, he was writing at an elite level. His lyrics during the School Trilogy era weren't simple pop hooks or generic love songs. They were dense, multi-layered compositions that referenced literature, philosophy, and social commentary. N.O., the title track from ARIRANG, critiques the Korean education system with a sophistication that would be impressive coming from a seasoned songwriter, let alone a teenager. Boy in Love from School Love Affair might sound like a straightforward crush anthem on the surface, but RM's verses inject a self-awareness and humor that elevate it beyond the standard K-pop fare. And deep cuts like Paldagangsan, Saudori Rap, and Cypher PT1 showcased a technical rapping ability, complex rhyme schemes, rapid-fire delivery, wordplay that works in both Korean and English that forced even the skeptics to admit, this kid can rap. The ciphers, in particular, became a hallmark of BTS's early identity. These were essentially rap showcases, tracks where RM, Suga, and J-Hope would go bar for bar, flexing their lyrical muscles with zero pop polish. And RM consistently delivered the most quotable, most technically intricate verses. Cypher PT2, Triptych is still considered by many hip-hop heads to be one of the hardest idol rap tracks ever recorded, and RM's verse on it is a masterclass in controlled aggression, every word placed with surgical precision, every flow switch executed flawlessly. He wasn't rapping like an idol. He was rapping like someone with something to prove. And he was proving it every single day. Beyond the music, RM's role as the group's de facto spokesperson during the School Trilogy era cannot be overstated. Because he could speak English fluently, again, self-taught through sheer determination and American sitcom reruns, RM was the one who handled international interviews, who communicated with foreign fans, who represented BTS to the global media. At 19. With no media training. No PR team coaching him. Just a kid with a brain that moved faster than most adults and a vocabulary in 2 languages that would put university professors to shame. Every time BTS appeared on an international platform during this era, it was RM who spoke. RM who translated. RM who made sure the world understood that these 7 Korean boys had something to say. And let's talk about the internal dynamics, because this is where RM's leadership during the School Trilogy era gets really human. 7 young men, most of them teenagers, crammed into a small apartment, working 18-hour days, dealing with exhaustion, homesickness, creative disagreements, and the constant pressure of potential failure. Tensions ran high. Arguments happened. There were moments, RM has openly admitted this, where the group nearly fell apart. Members considered leaving. The dream felt impossible. And in those moments, it was RM who held the center. Not with authority or intimidation, but with vulnerability. He'd sit the members down. He'd listen. He'd acknowledge his own doubts, his own fears, and then he'd remind them why they started. Number 3, Suga, the Shadow King who conquered a pandemic. Yeah, you read that right. Number 3 is Min Youngie. Suga. Agust D, whatever name you know him by. The man from Taegu just landed in the top 3 of this list, and I know some of you are staring at your screen right now going, wait, what? Suga? For the pandemic era? The era of dynamite and butter and permission to dance? The era where BTS went full bubblegum pop and broke every Billboard record in existence? That era belongs to Suga. And I get it. I totally get why this feels wrong at first. Because when you think of BTS in 2020 and 2021, you think of confetti cannons and retro disco suits and the most feel-good, radio-friendly music BTS ever made. You think of Dynamite debuting at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, a historic moment for Korean music. You think of Butter staying on top for weeks. You think of bright colors, English lyrics, and BTS becoming the kind of household name that your grandmother recognizes. And all of that is true. All of that happened. But here's the thing that makes this pick the most surprising entry on the entire list. While BTS the group was busy painting the world in neon and sugar-coated pop, one member was operating in a completely different dimension. One member was simultaneously running a shadow campaign, a parallel artistic universe that was darker, harder, more culturally rooted, and more emotionally devastating than anything the group released during that period. And that member wasn't doing it for charts. He was doing it because the world was falling apart and he had something to say. May 22nd, 2020. The world is 4 months into the COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdowns are in full effect across the globe. Concerts are canceled. The music industry is in freefall. People are scared, isolated, grieving. And in the middle of all that chaos, Min Youngi drops a bomb. Not a pop single. Not a feel-good anthem. A bomb. Daechwita. Let me paint the picture for you, because if you've never watched the Daechwita music video, you are missing one of the most audacious, visually stunning, culturally significant pieces of content any K-pop artist has ever released. The video opens in a historical Korean palace setting, and I'm not talking about a vague nod to tradition with some hanbok fabric in the background. I'm talking full Joseon Dynasty production design. Elaborate royal court architecture. Traditional Korean military processions. Suga, or rather, Agust D, plays two characters, a tyrannical king draped in gold, and a rebel warrior with a top knot and murder in his eyes. The two youngies face each other across a throne room, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a jingum sword. And then the beat drops. And it's not a standard trap beat. It's a fusion of traditional Korean gagak instrumentation, DGM flutes, gaegeum strings, jangu drums, layered over modern 808s and hi-hats in a way that shouldn't work, but absolutely, devastatingly does. Daechwita literally means great blowing and hitting. It's the term for the traditional military processional music played during royal marches in the Joseon era. Suga took a centuries-old Korean musical tradition and turned it into a trap banger. He took the sounds of his ancestors and weaponized them for the streaming age. And the world lost its mind. The Daechwita music video hit #1 on iTunes in over 80 countries. It became the most viewed solo music video by any BTS member at the time of release. The choreography, yes, there's choreography, and it goes hard, spawned a viral TikTok challenge that spread like wildfire even in the depths of a global lockdown. And the song itself? Critics called it a masterpiece of cultural fusion. Korean music scholars praised it for introducing gagak elements to a global audience in a way that felt respectful and authentic, not gimmicky. Western hip-hop blogs covered it as a legitimate rap release, not an idle side project. Suga had done something extraordinary. He had proven that Korean cultural heritage wasn't just compatible with global pop music, it was a competitive advantage. But Daechwita was just the opening salvo. It was the title track of D2, Suga's second mixtape under his Agust D alter ego, released the same day. And D2, as a complete body of work is, and I Will Die on This Hill, the single most artistically ambitious solo project released by any BTS member during the group's active years. The mixtape features 11 tracks that span an absurd range of emotions and styles. What do you think? Is a middle finger anthem aimed at every critic who ever doubted him, delivered with a flow so aggressive it feels like a verbal assault. Strange featuring RM is an introspective meditation on fame and isolation that hits differently when you remember it was released during a time when the entire planet was experiencing isolation for the first time. Burn It featuring Max is a haunting, atmospheric track about wanting to destroy your own demons, set against a production that blends acoustic guitar with ethereal synths in a way that's genuinely beautiful. And then there's people. Oh God, people. If Daechwita was Suga showing the world his sword, People was him showing the world his heart. It's a mid-tempo track with a deceptively simple melody, and the lyrics, written entirely by Suga, are a philosophical reflection on human relationships, on how people come and go, on how the passage of time changes everyone, on how it's okay to let go. People change, and that's just people. He sings, yes, sings in a soft, understated vocal that's so different from his razor-sharp rap delivery that it catches you completely off guard. People became a sleeper hit that burned slowly through the fandom and beyond, accumulating streams not through hype, but through the sheer emotional weight of its message. During a pandemic that forced billions of people to confront loneliness, loss, and the fragility of their relationships, People felt like a warm hand on your shoulder from someone who understood. But here's the part of the story that turns Suga's pandemic-era dominance from impressive to legendary, and it's not about music at all. It's about pain. Real, physical, years-long, gut-wrenching pain. In November 2020, just 6 months after dropping D2, Suga underwent surgery to repair a torn labrum in his left shoulder. And that injury? It wasn't new. It dated back to his PRE debut days, when he was involved in a car accident while working as a delivery driver to earn money during his trainee years. Yes, before BTS, before fame, before any of this, Min Youngie was so broke that he was delivering food on a motorcycle to supplement the nothing that big hit was paying its trainees. And he got hit by a car. And instead of getting proper treatment, because he couldn't afford it and was terrified that taking time off would mean losing his trainee spot, he just kept going. He hid the injury. He trained through the pain. He debuted through the pain. He performed through the pain. For 7 years, from pre-debut through the School Trilogy, HYYH, Wings, Love Yourself, and Map of the Soul eras, Min Youngie was performing complex choreography, jumping around stages, throwing his body into performances, all with a shoulder that was literally torn on the inside. 7 years of pain that he never talked about publicly until it became impossible to hide. The surgery in November 2020 was supposed to end the chapter. And it did, eventually. But the recovery process meant that Suga couldn't perform for weeks. He appeared in the Life Goes On music video sitting quietly in a room, arm in a sling, unable to dance with his brothers. He joined year-end award show performances via pre-recorded segments. And in those moments, seeing Youngie on screen, clearly healing, clearly frustrated at being sidelined, but still present, still contributing production and lyrics and creative direction even from a hospital bed. ARMY witnessed something that went beyond fandom. They witnessed resilience in its purest form. And here's the wild kicker that ties this entire section together. While Suga was simultaneously dropping D2, recovering from major surgery, and contributing to BTS's group activities, he was also producing for other artists. In May 2020, the same month as D2, he released 8, a collaboration with IU, arguably the biggest solo female artist in Korean music history. Suga produced the entire track, co-wrote the lyrics, and featured on it. 8 became one of the biggest Korean songs of 2020, topping charts across Asia and proving that Suga's production skills weren't just limited to his own projects. He could craft hits for anyone. The man was producing chart-topping songs for other artists, dropping his own critically acclaimed mixtape, recovering from shoulder surgery, and contributing to a BTS album, B, released November 2020, on which he has production credits for multiple tracks including Telepathy, a retro funk track that he produced almost entirely by himself, all during a global pandemic. That's not just multitasking. That's operating at a level of creative output that borders on superhuman. Number 2, Jungkook, the boy who became the voice of a generation. Close your eyes for a second. Just 1 second. And think about the word euphoria. Not the definition. Not the HBO show. The feeling. That weightless, breathless, almost unbearable rush of joy you feel when someone, makes the world stop being heavy. When the sky looks bluer than it has any right to. When you're laughing for no reason. When you're young and alive and for one perfect, fleeting moment, Everything is exactly as it should be. That feeling. Now open your eyes and tell me, whose voice do you hear singing it? If you're one of the hundreds of millions of people who fell in love with BTS between 2017 and 2018, the answer is automatic. It's involuntary. It's muscle memory in your soul. You hear Jungkook. You hear that voice, crystalline, soaring, effortlessly powerful, floating over a dream like instrumental, singing, "You're the cause of my euphoria," and suddenly you're not just listening to a song. You're inside a feeling, a memory, a moment you didn't even know you had until this kid from Busan reached into your chest and pulled it out. And that right there is why Jungkook is number 2 on this list. Because during the Love Yourself era, the era that transformed BTS from a massively successful K-pop group into the biggest musical act on planet Earth, Jungkook didn't just perform. He became the sound of an entire generation's emotional awakening. Let me take you back, because the context matters. September 18th, 2017. BTS releases Love Yourself, Her, and with it, the single DNA. And DNA does something that no BTS song had ever done before. It enters the Billboard Hot 100. Not the world chart. Not the K-pop chart. The Hot 100. The main one. The one that measures the pulse of American popular music. DNA debuts at number 67, and while that number might not seem earth-shattering by today's standards, in 2017, it was a seismic event. No K-pop group had penetrated the Hot 100 like that in years. And at the center of DNA, the opening vocal, the chorus, the melodic backbone was Jungkook. His voice was the hook. His face was the thumbnail. His energy in the music video, confident, magnetic, almost supernaturally charismatic, was what made millions of first-time viewers click replay. But DNA was just the beginning. Because the Love Yourself era wasn't a single album, it was a trilogy. Her, Tear, and Answer, 3 interconnected albums released over the span of a year, each one bigger than the last, each one pushing BTS further into the stratosphere. And across all 3 albums, Jungkook's role grew exponentially. On Her, he was the main vocalist delivering the hooks. On Tear, he was the emotional anchor. His performance on Fake Love, the era's darkest and most intense title track, showed a depth and rawness that stunned even longtime fans. And on Answer, he delivered Euphoria, the song that would become not just his signature track, but arguably the defining solo moment of the entire Love Yourself trilogy. Let's talk about Euphoria properly, because this song deserves its own documentary. Euphoria, theme of Love Yourself Wonder, first appeared on April 5th, 2018, as an intro film, a short cinematic trailer for the upcoming Love Yourself, Answer album. The video showed the BTS members in surreal, dreamlike scenarios, with Jungkook's voice floating over imagery that felt like a memory of youth that never quite happened. The full song was released on Love Yourself, Answer in August 2018, and it immediately became one of the most beloved songs in the entire BTS discography. Musically, Euphoria is deceptively simple, a synth-pop track with a bright, airy production that feels like running through an open field at golden hour. But Jungkook's vocal performance on it is anything but simple. Listen to the way he navigates the melody, the controlled power in the verses, the explosive release in the chorus, the subtle vocal runs that he threads through the bridge with the precision of a surgeon and the passion of a poet. This wasn't the voice of the 15-year-old kid who debuted in 2013 with a shaky vibrato and a tendency to oversing. This was the voice of a mature artist who had spent 4 years grinding, studying, evolving, absorbing every genre from R&B to rock to EDM, and emerging as one of the most technically gifted and emotionally intuitive vocalists in all of popular music. And the lyrics, "You're the cause of my euphoria," became a mantra. ARMY tattooed it on their bodies. They put it in their bios. They whispered it to themselves during hard times. Euphoria wasn't just a love song, it was a survival anthem disguised as a love song. It said, there is still beauty in this world. There is still a reason to feel joy. And for millions of young people navigating anxiety, depression, loneliness, and the crushing weight of growing up in an increasingly chaotic world. That message, delivered in Jungkook's impossibly tender voice, was a lifeline. Now let's talk about the Love Yourself era's performance side, because Jungkook didn't just dominate this era vocally, he dominated it physically. The choreography for Fake Love was one of BTS's most demanding routines ever, and Jungkook was the center. Not just in formation, in energy. There's a sequence at the end of the Fake Love dance practice video where the other members fall away and Jungkook is the last one standing, and the way he holds that final position, chest heaving, eyes burning, every muscle taut. It's like watching someone hold the weight of an entire era on their shoulders. Because he was. The 2018 Melon Music Awards performance is a moment that lives rent-free in the head of every ARMY who witnessed it. BTS performed a 30-minute mega stage that is still considered one of the greatest award show performances in K-pop history. And the opening? Jungkook. Alone on stage, performing a contemporary dance solo that was so intense, so emotionally charged, that the camera operators were visibly shaking trying to keep up. He ripped his shirt mid-performance, not as a gimmick, but as an emotional release, and the arena erupted. That single moment became one of the most replayed clips in K-pop history. Fan edits of it have accumulated hundreds of millions of views across platforms. And it wasn't planned. It was Jungkook being so consumed by the performance that his body acted before his brain. That's artistry. Then there was the Mama 2018 performance in Hong Kong, where Jungkook descended from the ceiling on wires while singing Euphoria live, flying over the audience like some kind of ethereal being who transcended gravity itself. He sang Live, no backing track cheat, actual live vocals, while being physically suspended in the air, spinning and swooping over tens of thousands of screaming fans. Try singing a high note while someone hangs you from a wire 50 feet in the air. Go ahead. Try it. You can't. Jungkook did it flawlessly. At 21 years old. And nobody was surprised because by that point, the Golden Maknae nickname had evolved from a cute fandom label into an undeniable statement of fact. Jungkook was genuinely good at everything. During the Love Yourself era specifically, this became impossible to ignore. His cover songs, Paper Hearts, by Tori Kelly, We Don't Talk Anymore, with Jimin, went massively viral, introducing his voice to audiences who'd never heard of BTS. His self-produced video series, GCF, Golden Closet Films, which he shot, edited, and directed himself using skills he taught himself in his spare time, became a beloved part of BTS content. GCF in Tokyo, released in November 2017, is a beautifully shot travel vlog that looks like it was produced by a professional filmmaker, not a 20-year-old idol with a camera. It showcased an artistic eye and storytelling instinct that went far beyond music and dance. He was a vocalist, a dancer, a filmmaker, an athlete, an artist. The word prodigy gets thrown around too loosely in K-pop, but with Jungkook, it's not hyperbole. It's understatement. And let's talk numbers, because the Love Yourself era demands we talk numbers. Love Yourself. Tear debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 in May 2018. Number 1. The first Korean-language album ever to top the Billboard 200. Number 1. Jimin, the art that became the artist. This is it. The summit. The peak of the mountain. And if you've been following this list from number 7 all the way up, through Jin's emotional farewell, V's cinematic universe, J-Hope's physical dominance, RM's foundational leadership, Suga's shadow empire, and Jungkook's generational voice, then you already know that whoever sits at number 1 has to be more than just talented, more than just popular, more than just a great performer. Number 1 has to be the member who didn't just define an era, they redefined what BTS could be. They have to be the one who took everything the group had been and everything they would become, and connected it all through a single, searing, unforgettable artistic statement that changed the trajectory of the group permanently. And that member, the one who sits at the top of this entire list, who owns the era that most critics, most fans, and most music scholars point to as BTS's artistic turning point, is Park Jimin. The Wings era. 2016 to 2017. The moment BTS stopped being a K-pop group and became a cultural movement. And the person most responsible for that transformation? A boy from Busan who studied contemporary dance, who was the last member to join BTS's trainee lineup, who almost didn't make the final roster, and who, in the span of one album cycle, delivered a performance so transcendent that it redefined what a K-pop idol was capable of. Let me tell you the story from the beginning, because Jimin's journey to #1 on this list starts long before the Wings album dropped. Park Jimin was born on October 13th, 1995, in Jeomjeong District, Busan, South Korea. From a young age, he was drawn to movement, not just any movement, but the kind of controlled, expressive, emotionally loaded movement that belongs to contemporary dance. While most kids were playing video games or kicking soccer balls, Jimin was training. Seriously training. He enrolled at Busan High School of Arts as a contemporary dance major, and he didn't just attend, he was the top student. #1 in his department. His teachers described him as a once-in-a-generation talent, a dancer whose body seemed to speak a language that most people couldn't even hear, let alone understand. Contemporary dance is not K-pop choreography. It's not about hitting beats and looking cool in a mirror. It's about using the human body as an instrument of emotion. Every extension, every contraction, every breath is a word in a sentence that tells a story without language. It demands extraordinary physical control, emotional vulnerability, and an almost painful level of self-awareness. And Jimin was elite at it. That background, that classical training in a form of dance that most K-pop idols have never even studied, is the secret weapon that made Jimin's dominance of the Wings era not just impressive, but inevitable. Because when BTS released Wings on October 10th, 2016, they weren't just dropping another album. They were making a statement. Wings was conceptually the most ambitious project BTS had ever attempted. Inspired by Hermann Hesse's novel Damien, a story about a young man's journey through temptation, self-discovery, and the conflict between the sheltered world of light and the dangerous world of darkness, Wings gave each of the 7 members their own solo track, each reflecting their personal struggles and growth. 7 solos. 7 short films. 7 windows into the souls of 7 young men. And while every member delivered something meaningful, RM's Reflection, Suga's First Love, V's Stigma, J-Hope's Mama, Jin's Awake, Jungkook's Begin. There was one solo that stood above the rest with such ferocious artistic power that it didn't just elevate the album. It elevated the entire group. That solo was Lie. And Lie was Park Jimin's masterpiece. Let's talk about what Lie actually is, because describing it as a song is like describing the Mona Lisa as a painting. Technically accurate. Completely insufficient. Lie is a 3-minute and 35-second descent into the psychology of self-deception. The song opens with a haunting orchestral swell, strings that sound like they belong in a horror film, before erupting into a pulsating, dark pop track driven by Jimin's vocals, which shift between desperate falsetto cries and controlled, almost whispered confessions. The lyrics are about being trapped in a lie, not a lie told to someone else, but a lie told to yourself. The idea that the persona you show the world is a cage, that the performance of being okay is slowly destroying you from the inside. And Jimin doesn't just sing these lyrics. He embodies them. His vocal delivery on Lie is unlike anything he'd done before or arguably since. There's a frantic quality to it, a breathlessness, a sense of someone clawing at the walls of their own psyche trying to escape. When he hits the chorus, caught in a lie, find me when I was pure, his voice cracks with emotion in a way that feels unscripted, unrehearsed, real. It's the sound of a performer who has stopped performing and started confessing. But the live performance of Lie is where Jimin transcended from idol to artist in the eyes of the world. During the Wings concert tour, Jimin performed Lie as a solo stage, and what he created was not a K-pop performance. It was contemporary dance theater set to pop music. The choreography, which Jimin had significant creative input on, featured him entangled in white fabric that wrapped around his body like chains, like bandages, like the physical manifestation of the lies the song describes. He would twist, pull, struggle against the cloth, his body arching and collapsing with the kind of controlled abandon that only a classically trained contemporary dancer could execute. Every movement told a story. Every gesture had weight. When the fabric finally released him, or rather, when he tore himself free, the audience reaction wasn't screaming. It was silence. The kind of silence that only happens when people are witnessing something they don't fully understand, but feel in their bones. And then the screaming came, and it was deafening, because they realized they'd just watched something that had fundamentally changed what they thought a K-pop concert stage was allowed to be. Jimin didn't just perform Lie. He proved that a K-pop stage could be art. Not art-adjacent. Not art-inspired. Art. The kind that belongs in galleries and dance theaters and the permanent collections of cultural institutions. And the industry noticed. Dance critics who had never paid attention to K-pop started writing about Jimin. Contemporary dance communities shared his performances in academic contexts. Choreographers around the world cited the Lie stage as a breakthrough moment for idol performance art. Jimin single-handedly elevated the standard of what a solo stage at a K-pop concert was expected to be. After Lie, you couldn't just walk out there and sing your song with some backup dancers. You had to mean something. You had to say something with your body. Jimin raised the bar so high that it's still up there, and most idols are still trying to reach it. Now let's talk about Blood, Sweat, and Tears, because if Lie was Jimin's solo coronation, then Blood, Sweat, and Tears was his group coronation. Released on October 10, 2016, as the title track of Wings, Blood, Sweat, and Tears was a genre-bending fusion of Moonbaton, tropical house, and pop that would have been musically impressive on its own. But the music video turned it into something otherworldly. Inspired by Renaissance art, religious iconography, and the themes of Hesse's Damien, the Blood, Sweat, and Tears MV is one of the most visually stunning K-pop videos ever produced. And there it is. The full countdown. 7 members. 7 eras. 7 moments in time where one person stepped forward and carried the torch brighter than anyone else. But here's the truth that this entire list has been building toward a truth that every single ARMY already knows in their heart but needs to hear said out loud. There is no BTS without all 7. Jin couldn't have been the emotional anchor of Chapter 2 if RM hadn't built the foundation a decade earlier. Jungkook's voice couldn't have defined a generation during Love Yourself if Jimin hadn't first proven during Wings that BTS could be art. Suga couldn't have run his shadow empire during the pandemic if J-Hope hadn't kept the performance machine running at peak efficiency during Map of the Soul. And V's cinematic brilliance during HYYH wouldn't have mattered if there hadn't been 6 other members whose individual stories made the Bangtan Universe worth exploring. That's the genius of BTS. They're not 7 soloists competing for the spotlight. They're 7 irreplaceable pieces of a puzzle that only makes sense when it's complete. Each era needed its king, and each king needed his brothers. So the next time someone asks you, who's the best member of BTS? You now have the answer. It depends on when you're asking. Because in every chapter of this extraordinary story, the best member was whoever the moment demanded. And every single time, someone stepped up. That's not luck. That's not management. That's Bangtan. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why they're not just the biggest group in the world. They're the greatest group of their generation. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and drop in the comments. Did number 3 actually surprise you? And who would you have put at number 1?